elements of the research profile: the very mangled black little bodies in body bags, the odor, the two strange doctors, and the report of a red-headed colonel. The black little bodies. Review of the autopsy protocols of the victims of this accident revealed extensive similarities to the descriptions of the bodies allegedly described by the missing nurse. Dennis related in various interviews that the missing nurse described 3 very mangled, black little bodies in body bags. Records of this mishap confirm that the victim suffered injuries extreme, multiple. According to persons who assisted in the identification of the remains from this crash, and in compliance with Air Force directives in effect at the time, human remains pouches, commonly called body bags, were used to recover and transport victims' bodies. Statements made by Dennis described bodies that were 3.5 to 4 feet tall and black in color. The autopsy protocols of 2 victims described extensive third-degree burns and loss of the lower extremities. Dennis also described a head of one of the bodies that was not rigid but flexible, and tissues of a body in strings that looked as if they were pulled by predatory animals after the crash. An autopsy protocol of a victim described multiple fractures of all bones of the skull and partially cooked strands of bowel over the abdomen and in the chest. Additional similarities between the autopsy protocols and Dennis's statements were a detached hand and description of the fingers and arms of the crash victims. The autopsy protocol of one victim also described remains with the face completely missing. This description corresponds with Dennis's recollections of a body with eyes and nose that were concave. Also, the drawing of the head of one of the little bodies Dennis claims is representative of a drawing given to him by the missing nurse is a reasonably accurate representation of a human body with its face completely missing. Another similarity to Dennis's account is that of the 11 victims of this accident, only 3 were autopsied, the same number of bodies that were allegedly autopsied in the missing nurse's account. Finally, records revealed that due to limited facilities at the Walker Air Force Base Hospital, the funeral home in Roswell. This is the same funeral home where Dennis claimed to be employed in 1947 until 1962. Footnote: it is unclear when Dennis worked at this funeral home, since the city and phone directories listed him as co-owning a different funeral home in Roswell, as vice president of another funeral home in Roswell, and as having been employed as a drugstore supervisor and oil field worker during the periods when he claims he worked at the Ballard Funeral Home. End of footnote. The odor. Transportation of remains to a small base hospital was unusual since the hospital did not have the necessary facilities, a preparation room, refrigeration equipment, or a morgue to accommodate multiple deceased persons. Records of other crashes involving Walker Air Force Base showed that the remains of crash victims were transported either to another facility in Walker Air Force Base or directly to a local funeral home. In fact, the Air Force manual that prescribed the policies, standards, and procedures relating to the care and disposition of deceased Air Force personnel in effect in 1956, Air Force Manual 143-1, Mortuary Affairs, did not direct that remains be brought to a hospital. It encouraged the local commander to improvise facilities and make use of garages, warehouses, large tents, or other facilities for processing groups of remains. Nonetheless, records of the June 1956 crash and interviews with the persons who processed the remains indicated that the victims were brought from the crash site to the Walker Air Force Base Hospital. During the identification procedures, the odor became too strong and the bodies and the identification activities were moved to a refrigerated compartment at the base commissary. Interviewed for this report were the registrar of the hospital, First Lieutenant Jack Wenry, now a retired major, and a medical administration specialist assigned to the registrar, Staff Sergeant John Walter, now a retired Master Sergeant, both of whom assisted in the processing and identification of the deceased air crewmen. Wenry and Walter both recalled the strong odor, that some persons became ill during the procedures, as did the alleged missing nurse, and the unusual transfer of the remains to the Walker Air Force Base commissary. The nurse also allegedly described the transfer of remains to another building on the base. However, Neither recalled that a nurse was missing or any of the other activities as described by Dennis. The Big Red-Headed Colonel. The Big Red-Headed Colonel is a likely reference to the hospital commander, Colonel Lee F. Farrell, who was 6 feet 1 inches tall and had red hair. Farrell served at the Walker Air Force Base Hospital from 1954 until 1960. It would not be unusual for the hospital commander to be present at the hospital following a major aircraft accident. The two mysterious doctors. The two doctors not assigned to the Walker Air Force Base Hospital, who were allegedly observed at the hospital performing preliminary autopsies, have been identified as an Air Force civilian identification specialist and a local Roswell pathologist. Identification specialist. In an aircraft mishap involving multiple fatalities, identification of victims can go beyond the capabilities of a small Air Force hospital such as the one at Walker Air Force Base. Beginning in July 1951, the Air Force Memorial Affairs Branch, now called Air Force Mortuary Services, employed full-time civilian morticians and funeral directors, known as identification specialists, to assist Air Force installations in the identification of deceased persons. When requested by the local commander, the identification specialists, on a 24-hour standby basis, responded from Wright-Patterson Air Force Base to the location of an incident. Records confirm that Walker Air Force Base only requested an identification specialist on 2 occasions, in October 1955 and to identify the victims of the June 1956 crash. For this accident, the identification specialist arrived at Walker Air Force Base on June 27, 1956, and made positive identifications of the 11 crewmen on June 28, 1956. When contacted for this report, the retired identification specialist who responded to this accident, Mr. George Swaderer, did not have any recollections of Dennis, the nurse, the pediatrician, or any of the other unusual activities as alleged. Schwaderer did recall that on identifications of group remains such as this, it was typical to wear standard hospital surgical gowns and masks, and that he was often mistaken for a pathologist. Due to restrictions on the release of information concerning the identification process, uninformed individuals who may, by chance, have witnessed some portions of the identification were often the source of a considerable amount of speculation. The identification procedures employed by the identification specialist were not classified, but AFM-143-1 Mortuary Affairs directed that no information will be divulged concerning identification or shipment of any remains until a final determination of identity has been resolved for all remains. For this accident, identification took approximately 2 days, and any releases of information were restricted to individuals with an official requirement. These restrictions extended not only to the general public, but also to Air Force members. A possible reference to the identification specialist is found in one of Dennis's recitations of the account. Dennis, a mortician who might possess limited knowledge of Air Force mortuary procedures, stated that he was told the doctors might be pathologists from Walter Reed Army Hospital. Walter Reed Army Medical Center in Washington, D.C. is a likely location that an unknown pathologist performing an autopsy on military personnel might have been based. Co-located at Walter Reed is the Armed Forces Institute of Pathology, AFIP, and beginning in 1955, AFIP sent pathologists into the field to examine aircraft accidents. A review of records at AFIP and interviews with persons involved with the identification procedures at Walker Air Force Base do not indicate AFIP sent any personnel to assist in this accident. Pathology consultant. In June 1956, the Walker Air Force Base Hospital did not have a pathologist on staff. All autopsies and examinations of pathological specimens were conducted by a civilian consultant from Roswell. The June 1956 crash indicated that Dr. Alfred S. Blau of Roswell performed the 3 autopsies. Obviously, neither the pathologist nor the identification specialist were normally assigned to the Walker Air Force Base Hospital and would not be expected to be present at the hospital, especially to an observer with limited knowledge of these activities. Continuing research. The focus of research was now shifted to other activities that might explain the remaining portions of the profile. The unexplained portions were: A. The presence of a red-headed captain. B. The wreckage in the rear of the ambulance outside the Walker Air Force Base Hospital. C. The heightened state of security at the Walker Air Force Base Hospital. And D. The shipment of a body with a large head to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. Based on previous research, this effort began by examining records of the other Air Force aerial vehicle known to have operated extensively in the Roswell area since the late 1940s, high-altitude research balloons. End of Section 6. Recording by Aaron Bennett. Section 7 of the Roswell Report, Case Closed by James McAndrew. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Aaron Bennett. The Roswell Report, Case Closed by James McAndrew. High Altitude Research Projects. Section 2.3, High Altitude Research Projects. By 1960, hundreds of high-altitude research balloons, some that carried anthropomorphic dummies, descended and were recovered in areas surrounding Walker Air Force Base and Roswell. But based on the descriptions of the bodies and the involvement of a hospital and medical personnel, it did not seem likely that high-altitude research balloons with scientific instruments or anthropomorphic dummies could possibly account for this testimony. Therefore, the focal point of the research shifted to manned high-altitude balloon flights conducted by the Air Force during the mid to late 1950s and early 1960s. Manned balloon flights. Two manned balloon projects, Man High and Excelsior, were conducted within the time period targeted for research. Man High from 1957 to 1958, and the manned portion of Excelsior in 1959 and 1960. The only other manned high-altitude balloon project in Air Force history, Stargazer, did not fly until 1962. It was discovered that only 6 manned flights were made for Man High and Excelsior. These flights were determined unlikely as the source of the testimony since there were no injuries or deaths. All 6 flights had been the subject of intense media coverage, and none were flown in the vicinity of Roswell. Despite the apparent dead end these flights presented to explain this account, records were obtained and persons involved in Man High and Excelsior were contacted and interviewed. These records and interviews confirm that there were, in fact, only 6 U.S. Air Force manned high-altitude balloon flights, none with characteristics similar to the testimony. However, detailed examinations of the records revealed that, in addition to the 6 high-altitude balloon flights, there were also numerous low-altitude balloon flights made to train and qualify the high-altitude balloon pilots. Records of the training flights indicated that some of these were conducted at Holloman Air Force Base, New Mexico, and several mishaps occurred resulting in injuries to the pilots. Further research revealed that one accident had taken place just northwest of Roswell. The accident occurred on May 21, 1959, 10 miles northwest of Walker Air Force Base, on a pilot training mission for the upcoming Project Excelsior and Stargazer flights scheduled to begin that fall. Analysis of the accident revealed actual events that closely resembled the remaining portions of the established profile. Low-altitude balloon training missions. Background. In April 1958, Colonel John P. Stapp, commander of the U.S. Air Force Aeromedical Laboratory at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, appointed a new project officer for Project Excelsior, Captain Joseph W. Kittinger, Jr. Excelsior was part of an ongoing program to examine high-altitude aircraft escape procedures and equipment. Kittinger was